This is one of those very simple steps. If you do in EB1, it's going to up your game exponentially. And you will be surprised how many people do not do this. And that simple trick is, well, I want to tell you, I'm going to show you a book. That book is this one. It is Austin Kleon's Show Your Work. This is going to be the theme of our conversation today. Because when I do EB1 consults, by the way, if you want to have a chat with me for 30 minutes about your profile, you can book your call with me at topmate.io/Dr. Aditi Paul. I enjoy talking to people about their work. And no, I'm not going to give you a laundry list of things that you need to do starting today, going to hackathons, going to write a whole bunch of thought leadership articles. No, I want to first dig out what you actually do and how much juice we can extract from that profile that you already have. And if there is any gaps left, then only refill it. That's my strategy. But this is something that I find myself advising people quite a bunch. Because here's how the consults usually go. You walk into the conversation. Usually, folks send me either their resume or a Google Drive where they have their documents, or they have an Excel sheet where they have the criteria, what work they have done, and how they satisfy that criteria. And more often than not, I will read a whole bunch of words. And those words sound something like this, like designed, implemented, executed, data pipeline, something. Look, I'm not a techie, so I'm not even going to pretend that I understand half these terms. But the most obvious thing that comes to anybody's mind, let alone mine or a USCIS officer, is but like, what do you do? Like, what is the outcome of your work? That's where showing your work is extremely important. So, for example, for academics, this comes in a straightforward way because whatever experiments they do in their labs, that gets shown to the outside world through a publication. That's just the nature of their job. Similarly, for artists like painters, they paint in their studio and they have an exhibit and it's displayed for folks to know. It is not that obvious for somebody like a data scientist or a software solutions architect or a product manager. At that point, it becomes extremely important for you to tell the USCIS officer, hey, this is what we do. This is the product that I created. And not just news articles of the product that's out there in the market. Let's say that you are a product manager at Uber. Yes, we all use Uber, the app. But where does a product manager come in? Where does a data engineer come in? Where does a data scientist come in? Where does a quality engineer come in? So you have to take the USCIS officer through that entire chain of command that, hey, this is the process that we follow to take this fleeting idea into a product and into the market and into the hands of the people who use it. This is where I come in. This is a snippet of my work. So I attended an information session with Mandy Neese. She used to be a USCIS officer. Now she's an immigration attorney. And this is one element of the talk that really stuck with me. That when good immigration attorneys will submit your work, she said that it is pretty common knowledge for attorneys who are submitting EB1 or O1 applications for artists to submit the artist's work. So, for example, when my EB1 petition was submitted, my attorney submitted hard copies of the entire book that I wrote. So the USCIS officer can touch and feel my work and can see that, hey, this is the work that this person has done. Similarly, you also have to find those samples of your work. Now, as a product manager, I'm just taking an example of a product manager. What do those samples of work look like? A slide deck that you present during your company all hands could be a sample of your work. If you are a software engineer and you are writing code, that code could be a sample of your work, but you need to contextualize it. Just giving the USCIS officer a screenshot of a code that you've written truly does not mean anything. And the last thing you want to do is confuse the USCIS officer or by not giving context, make the USCIS officer feel dumb. You don't want to do that. You always want to explain that, hey, this is what I do. These are my job responsibilities. This is the sample of my work. For example, this is a screenshot of the code that I'd written. This line indicates this. This is where this fits into the ecosystem of the product that we have worked with. This becomes extremely tricky for folks who work in strategy. Because how do you show strategy? You can show a product, you can show a book, you can show a painting, but how do you show strategy? At that point, you have to show tertiary samples of your work. Yes, give examples of the slide decks that you have created, but also show a before and after. That, hey, before my strategy was implemented in the company, this was what was happening to the company. This was the standing of the company. This was the strategy that I presented. This is a slide deck explaining the strategy. And after the strategy was implemented, look how the transformation happened. That's showing your work. But you have to meet the USCIS officer and make it extremely simple for them to understand, yo, what do you do? Like, what is it that you do? Because this person doesn't know you, can't see you, can't ask you follow up questions. So just telling them that you implemented some fleet, something, Azure, whatever, like that makes no sense to the USCIS officer. And forget about USCIS officer for a second. Does your best friend know what you do? Sometimes I used to struggle explaining to my best friend what I used to do as a user experience researcher. I was like, what do you do? What is user experience research? I understand user experience design, but what the hell is research? Then I used to show them, like, okay, this is the survey that I gave. These are the interviews that I did. So that's how you need to contextualize and explain your work and make it tangible for the USCIS officer to really touch and feel and get an idea of the work that you do. So the next time when you have to prepare for your EB1 petition, and you automatically conclude that, oh, I just have critical role. How do I explain authorship? Pause. Do you really have critical role if you cannot show samples of your work? So go back to the drawing board and get excerpts of your work, because the USCIS officer, if they do not understand what do you do to begin with, how are they going to make a decision if what you do is extraordinary or not? Common fucking sense.